I'm from Toledo, Ohio. I grew up in the inner city neighborhoods. I grew up around, gangs, drugs, and things like that. Mother was always, tough on me, grandmother, and things like that. Had an absent father. Back in the day, I used aggression. I was a smaller dude, so I used aggression, and hurt and anger from things that I was missing to let out my emotions. So when I was younger, I got into a lot of fights. I got into a lot of altercations, just from being hurt. So for me, I was the smallest dude in the group of kids that I ran with. So I was always the target as far as that went. So I used to be afraid, to say something back. And that instantly turned into me being aggressive. So I kind of carried that behavior on to my young adult life. And so then it went from me being the bully target to me being a bully. And once I realized that I was actually able to defend myself, I started to make that my culture, my way out, my way to use, what people said and how I felt about myself insecure personally. I use that, as a defense mechanism. Just, you got a problem, let's fight. And, it led me to a lot of different things, and the good thing about that was it led me to martial arts. And martial arts completely turned my whole perspective around on that whole situation of calming yourself and humbling yourself more. So having a fight with honor, you know what I mean? Like right before you got off Instagram, somebody said something and I wish I could have caught it right then, but somebody said I can fight, I could teach people how to fight. It's not about fighting. Being a martial artist is about, it's a difference between a fighter and a martial artist. When I fought mixed martial arts, I fought in a cage, I was a fighter. I was fighting to win. I was fighting to, for prize fighting, so to speak, for titles and things like that. Being a martial artist is separate from that. Being a martial artist, it's a lot of inner things you fix doing that. You understand what I'm saying? So this is my take on it. This is what, for me being over, I'm now going on 15 years of being a martial artist in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Judo, and being a competitor in both and an instructor in both. An instructor in Jiu-Jitsu. I'm not an instructor in Judo yet. But I've learned the difference between being a fighter and a martial artist. And once I learned what a martial artist actually was, it completely turned my life around and realized that aggression I shown in the cage, because in the cage it was still something different. Even though you were fighting for a prize, it was an honor, you trained for this, you worked hard for this, it was still different from being a martial artist and a student of the actual art. So turning my life around into that completely gave me a whole different aspect on, and it helped me grow of what I used to be. So now I own a gym in Ohio on an island called Putin Bay, Ohio. It's a seasonal gym. It's the first gym ever. I'm a published book author, which is why we're on here, with a book called The New Kid Under Dusha Management. Big shout out to them. They helped me out a lot. They, completely looked out for me in all aspects of what I've been trying to do. I'm a public speaker, and I still compete in the martial arts.
Randy, the Gorilla Copeland!
I was at home one day, and the way I started getting into this anti-bullying kick, first of all, was when I first opened up to the public, when I realized that my fighting days was coming to an end. I was getting older, and once I realized that was coming to an end, I wanted to teach kids. And I wanted kids to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is really, in my area at that time, was not very popular. And especially growing up in the inner city, all we had was boxing, football, and basketball, but then like growing up at, in the inner city, for some kids, wrestling wasn't there. I wrestled, but it was because I had no choice. My mother said, you're going to do something or you're going to be in the orchestra. So I'd rather do wrestling than that. But a lot of kids in our areas, in our communities, black kids didn't wrestle. And that was something that, I wanted to give to the community, that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, something that helped me. And my first 7 students was all bully victims. And I didn't realize how serious it was. Growing up, I didn't have social media, just like I'm sure you didn't. So when you say bullying, we would just, have it out in the neighborhood, and then we'll keep going about our merry way. But then when social media gets put involved, it's way more ways to attack people and things like that. So I started seeing kids drop out of school, getting homeschooled. Growing up, I didn't know anybody that was homeschooled. I had no clue of homes. I didn't even know what that was. So then when I hear about kids at 8 years old committing suicide or at least attempting it, I was like, man, it's crazy. Is this really happening? So I started just posting statistics that I would Google, and look up stories and research, and then I would post those stories, and then I got a call to speak at a church, and I'm like, speak for what? And they say, you do the anti-bullying thing, right? I'm like, yeah, I guess I do. So that just led from me speaking there to speaking at our charter schools in the city, speaking at colleges and all that. I mean, it just rained, trickle-down effect from there. The way the book came about, I was sitting at home one day, and I was on In Demand on cable, and I accidentally clicked a movie called The Words. And I'm like, man, I just paid $3.99 for this. Forget it, I'm going to watch it. Right. And it was about a gentleman who wrote a book. And I sat there and I was like, hey, man, I can write a book. So I figured the best way to do it was to do what I'm already involved in. I'm involved in the children. I have a behavioral intervention. I didn't mention that. I'm contracted through the Toledo Public Schools to do behavioral intervention. So I'm pretty much the help for, the behavioral kids and things like that. So they contract me from November to April. So that's what I do during the winter months. So basically I wrote these stories. It's 3 stories. I wrote them, and I didn't know how to get nothing published or anything like that. So when I met Sean Reed, an author on Dusha Management, he said, hey, you should ever think about writing a book? I said, and this is 6 years later. And I'm like, actually, I have. Well, I don't know if it's to the standards, but, I sent it to him, and he's like, this is what I do. I'm like, wow. So there we are now. It got published last year, June 29th. It started off just a little story. And then, I'm a big comic book guy. So I'm a huge Incredible Hulk fan. So I created the book, and you have it. And, my nickname from fighting in martial arts is Clone, right? So in the book, the gentleman who's a teacher, his alter ego is this big gorilla. Now, a lot of people have a misconception on what a gorilla is. Everybody see the gorilla, and they think it's the biggest, meanest, most devastating creature you've ever seen. But gorillas are actually gentle, and they don't attack. They're very territorial, obviously, but they don't attack. So that just fit my persona now. And I think it was just good to put into the story. Like, this big creature is a problem, is very gentle, and I thought that would be good to put in the story as well. When it comes to bullying, you see this big, massive creature not being a bully. You understand what I'm saying? So that was where we went with it. And that idea was from Sean Reed. Sean Reed said, hey, why don't we make it a comic book? I said, that sounds good too. And that's where we went with it. When I got introduced to MMA, to be honest, it was still when I was still in my, not so good behavior days. I was in my early 20s, and I used to run around downtown bars of Toledo and get into stuff and things like that. I was introduced to 2 gentlemen, and they happened to teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I was like, you know what? All right, let's see what is this? And I went. And after it was, and I was always a bigger guy. So when I went, I seen all these little guys. I'm like, oh man, I can do this. So the first day I went, they completely handled me. So I was like, wow, man, these little dudes can do this to me without being stronger than me. And that really right there was what triggered the humbleness in me. Like, I was a big guy, weightlifter, all of that. And I was being handled by guys 60, 70 pounds lighter than me. So I was like, dude, I have to learn this because this is amazing. And it humbled me because a lot of guys with egos, when they go to, and I've seen it, when they go to jiu-jitsu and a woman or somebody smaller than them to handle them, you don't see them again. Whereas me, it completely gave me motivation to stay because now I want to learn it. I never left since, but that led into, hey, you can get $150 to fight in a cage. And I'm like, $150? Now this is back then. It's not what it is now. But this was back then where it was still trying to ban it. It was not on cable TV, this early 2000s. And I'm like, you get 150 to fight? They was like, yeah, you can fight. And I said, there's no jail. Like, this is legal. They said, yeah, it's not sanctioned, but it is a legal event. So I went in there, my first fight, not trained, only knew a couple months of jiu-jitsu and some wrestling. I went in there and got the heck beat out of me. And I'm like, whoa, like, hold on, man. Like, what is this? And that was another thing that motivated me right there. I went and I said, I'm going to take a whole year to train. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to just train and learn the sport, and I'm going to go back and fight again because I didn't want to give up. I really didn't like the fact that I got beat up. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to just take a year. And after that, I went on an 8-fight winning streak. I won a Canadian light heavyweight title, and then I won the first cruiserweight title of Ohio. They tried to do a weight class in between light heavyweight and heavyweight, and they did a cruiserweight. And that when it was finalized, I won that title. Well, they eventually took it away, but I won that title, and that was in 2010. My last title won was 2013, and that was my final fight. The weight classes go 125, 135. They go every 10 pounds, pretty much. A lot of guys who couldn't make a certain weight. Weight cutting is big in sport, which is one of the reasons why I had to give it up, because I'm pretty short for a heavyweight, and I couldn't make the lighter weight of 205. So when I was struggling to make 205, it was time for me to hang it up. So it goes 205 and then 206 to 265. That's a big gap. So they tried to do 206 to 225, which is amazing, but for some reason it just didn't catch. So when they got it confirmed, I was that first fight in that weight, because I was pretty heavy to make 205, and I was like 250, 245, and I was cutting to 205, which I didn't have a nutritionist and things like that, so I kind of was killing myself almost. And when they came with the 225, that was a 15-pound cut for me, so it was perfect. But it didn't stick. So it's just one of the things they tried it didn't work, and that's what goes on with this fight game. A lot of weight classes change and stuff like that. But I think they should bring that back. I think a lot of guys. I think it'll be an exciting weight class for those guys who aren't that big but aren't that small either. 206 to 225. 265 is a huge jump.
Ladies and gentlemen, the first round of time 128 by TKO. Please put the hands together for Brandon.
So across the board, from kids to adults, when you are experiencing this situation, this is what I take from it too. This is my approach to it too, because I knew why I was that type of individual. When you're dealing with a bully situation, you're dealing with two people who are insecure. Because like I always tell the kids and adults too, if you spend 1 second insulting somebody, then that means you don't feel good about yourself. You understand what I'm saying? So when you get a situation like that, then you have to understand that the only reason why this person is affecting you, number one, is because they're insecure, and number two is because you are too. And your insecurities are allowing your feelings to be hurt. Now, everybody is susceptible to get their feelings hurt. However, we have to have an understanding, and I'm not saying it's right that people do those things because of how they feel. If more people would attack their own personal issues, we could rid the world of this, and that's just wishful thinking. However, the fact is that we have to do things to prevent it within ourselves. One thing is have confidence in who you are as a person, and that way the negativity truly bounces directly off of you. It can be somebody currently right now in wherever, who has a ton of negative things to say about me. I don't know why they would. I can see why they would in the past, but not now. But at the end of the day, I'm so comfortable with who I am now that it doesn't affect me at all. And in fact, that if that is ever the case, and I have to encounter a human being like that, then I would offer that advice to them. I would offer that advice. Look, you got to dig inside you. What's wrong with you that you don't like me? If I have never done nothing personal, financially, family, anything, I wake up every morning feeling good about myself. And that's why I post the motivational things I post on my social media. Those are the reasons why I wake up feeling that way, no matter what type of bad day I have. And I told people, you need to stop having bad days. You need to have bad moments. Because a bad day is because something happened earlier that you hold on to all day. Right. So as a human being, I still have bad moments, but I need to handle that and continue to move on with the day. A lot of these things that we're dealing with, and my advice to people, male, female, kid, adult, is to have confidence in yourself first. That is number one. Have confidence in yourself to where now, when you do encounter these things, you know how to deal with them, and they don't affect you as much as what we see going on right now. You go to DushaManagement.com. It's also on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Barnes & Noble. So you can get it on that. Preferably get it from DushaManagement.com because the book sales look better coming from there. Dusha is spelled DUSCHAMGT.com. Absolutely not. I think we got everything pretty much covered. And again, just the main thing that I push is self-confidence. Once we build that, it truly is a huge help dealing with certain situations. This bullying thing, you got to understand, and people need to know that somebody who has those bad intentions are not well themselves. And we may not be able to help them. We may not be able to change them, but we can change how we respond and we react. And that's with self-confidence.